on YouTube, you're live on Facebook and as well as on YouTube, and you can as well send us your feedback through our SMS line, that is 23059. Now, Morning Live starts now. And President William Ruto has criticized opposition leaders for what he called empty rhetoric that does not benefit Kenya's development. He was speaking during a visit to Westlands and Kabete to inspect development projects. The president said his government has fulfilled its promises over the past 3 years, where President William Ruto also inspected the construction of affordable housing in Kabete and handed over 16 new classrooms at Kangi Primary School. He emphasized that his priority is to deliver on the development agenda before the election campaign period begins.
Riziki. Hii manyumba yote tunajenga Kenya. Hakuna deni ya mtu tumekopa. Nyinyi mnanielewa? Na mimi nilisema tutakomesha mambo ya kutafuta madeni kiholela. Tumepunguza mambo ya madeni. Tumehakikisha ya kwamba we are living within our means. Tumeimarisha mambo ya uchumi wa Kenya. Tumepanga elimu ya watoto wetu. Mimi leo naenda kufungua madarasa ya watoto wa Nairobi County. Tumejenga madarasa 314. Wabunge wamejenga madarasa 500 ili tuongeze nafasi ya masomo ya watoto wetu hapa Nairobi County. Nyinyi mnasema tuendelee ama tuendelee, my friends?
All right, moving on, embattled ODM Secretary General, that is Edwin Sifuna, has opposed any plans to have a deadline extension for the memorandum of understanding between ODM and UDA on the implementation of the 10-point agenda. Sifuna says that the government has not shown seriousness and commitment in honoring the agreement, whose deadline is set to lapse in the next 9 days. Now, he argues that if President William Ruto has failed to honor the commitment, he won't honor any negotiations with the Linda Ground faction of ODM.
Bado tunawauliza hawa ndugu zetu ambao wako kwenye hii broad-based. Iwapo William Ruto anaweza kukiuka mkataba ambao umetiwa sahihi na Raila Odinga mwenyewe. Nyinyi mnatuambia mnataka kuanza mazungumzo tena muweke mkataba mwingine. Kama mtu hawezi kufuata mkataba mdogo kama huu, ni yapi ambayo mnafikiria mtasikizana na afuate? Haitawezekana. Sababu kwa hivyo mtu yeyote ambaye anakaa mahali anawaza anafikiria ati anaweza kuenda assign extension ya hii mkataba, lazima uende Bondo uchukue signature ya baba.
All right, moving on to matters healthcare. The Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council has now started a formal partnership with the regional police in Nairobi in a move aimed at strengthening enforcement on health facility standards and flashing out illegal operators. Now, this comes amid growing concerns following recent cases of malpractice involving dentists operating outside regulatory. Let's take that again, where the officials stated that the partnership will support enforcement actions, including the closure of facilities that do not comply with the regulations. The council also plans to strengthen monitoring and reporting systems to ensure timely action is taken against violators. This joint effort is expected to improve coordination at the local level and protect residents from unsafe healthcare practices.
We shall be sharing the lists of legal health facilities across all regions in Nairobi to the county commissioner and his teams to continue helping us enforce those that are illegal to be kept out of the system, because we want Kenyans to receive services only from facilities that are legitimate and have qualified staff to work within them.
To give the assurances that we are going to work with them so that we cap this issue of illegal practitioners working in our areas of jurisdiction. We have all the security committees and they have been enlightened on implementation of the KMPDC program.
All right, moving on, opposition leaders have stated that they plan to offer Kenyans an alternative government in 2027 elections. They emphasized that they will not allow any attempts by the current administration to manipulate or rig the elections. Now, speaking on yesterday's during visit to Ogambo, Kenyan, and Macharia in Kisii County, the leaders say that they are prepared to take all necessary measures to prevent the Kenyan government and the Kenya Kwanza from divesting 15% of its stake in Safaricom PLC, now which they claim is a channel for corruption. The leaders, who have been conducting a charm offensive in the Gusii region over the past 3 days, issued a strong warning to officials in President William Ruto's stronghold, stating that they will not hold rallies despite alleged plans to disrupt them.
Tumeamua tutakuwa demokrasia ya vyama vingi. Kwa hivyo kila mtu ako na uhuru, hata wao wako na uhuru kufanya siasa yao ya vyama vyao.
Juzi hapo Keroka na Kisii Town umepanga wahuni ikuembo your nephew na mapanga waumize Matiang'i na marafiki zake, waumize wamama, waumize watoto. Wewe huna adabu, unachaguliwa na watu ya Kisii. Siku kubwa ya ndugu yako akifanywa mfalme wa Bogusi, unapanga wakora kuja kupiga ndugu yako nyumbani.
Hiyo damu ya watoto wa Kenya haiwezi kuwa ilimwagika bure. Tutahakikisha kwamba haki inafanyika, haki kwa kila mwananchi wa Kenya, haki kwa mtu wa Gucha, haki kwa Mkishima yale alipo.
Now, the Kenya National Highway Authority, that is KENHA, has announced plans to construct a new 800-meter section near the bridge and expand the adjoining road as part of a major infrastructure upgrade aimed at reducing deadly accidents and providing safer transport corridor. Speaking during a public participation forum, KENHA Deputy Director, that is Michael Wangala, said that the project will also involve the reconstruction of 2.7 kilometers of road with an expected completion period of 24 months. Now, the new alignment is designed to eliminate sharp bends and steep hills that have contributed to frequent accidents.
And they would also come again on the ground to engage the public and those affected.
Our Masolofea, the engineers, they move to the ground so that we can have the work done as fast as possible. Ndio hiyo ndio itawafanya wajue ni gharama, ni mashamba gapi ambayo wanatakiwa, ekari ngapi wanatakiwa serikali inunue.
Tumeamini sasa serikali imetusikiza, sababu watu wameishia hapo wengi sana. Tangu mwaka wa 1985 wakati hii barabara ilifunguliwa, kulikuwa na changamoto ya ajali nyingi sana. Kwa hivyo tumepoteza watu, wengine ni viwete, na sasa tumefurahia.
Now let's talk matters education. And despite the government pushing for 100% transition of all students to grade 10, a large number of students have reportedly stayed at home, especially in the Murungu area. Speaking in Murungu Voi during a ceremony marking the release of results at Murungu Secondary School, their teachers and their deputies admitted to delays in implementing the government directive to ensure every student joins school, while warning that heads of schools could be dismissed if they fail to take responsibility. Now, Voi MP Hamisi Chome commended government efforts through consistency funds and to strengthen the educational infrastructure in the area.
Tutafute kiwanja mahali ambao ni central, ikiwa watoto wa kutoka Ngulia, wa kutoka Sagala, wa kutoka Mbololo, Marungu, Kasigau, Kaloleni, wote wanaweza wakaja kwa shule ile, iwe ni shule moja inahudumia jamii zote za Voi.
Darasa grade 10 wako wanafunzi 50 kama sijapata vibaya. Inamaanisha nini? Bwana Chief, inamaanisha wazazi wa hapa hawajaleta watoto kulingana na venye serikali ilisema 100% transition. Hii shule inahitajika iwe na wanafunzi wa grade 10 zaidi ya 100 na. Director, ni ukweli ama ni uongo? Chief Maungu na chief wako mumelala. Wanafunzi waletwe.
Still on matters education, some classrooms have collapsed at Matulo FYM Primary School due to heavy rains. Some students in the school located in the Webuye West constituency are studying under trees after parts of their classrooms fell, while the walls of other classrooms have developed cracks. Speaking to the media, the chairperson of the school committee, Moses Kayemba, said that the ongoing heavy rains in the area have caused the classrooms to start collapsing, putting the students' lives at risk.
Tuliambiwa tuangushe madarasa 14. Na tukiangalia wakati tulikuwa tunalilia wasaitisi, ikapatikana kwamba hata hali ya anga haituruhusu tuendelee kuzitumia.
Yenyewe imeadhiri masomo ya wanafunzi. Shule yenyewe ukiingia it's not even appealing. Inahitaji mijengo mizuri, inahitaji mazingara mazuri, watoto wawe smart, walimu wakija hapa pia wawe motivated.
Watoto wetu hatuna haja wapate changa ndio wakimbie waseme wakuje kusaidia. Tafadhali tusuie kabla janga halijatokea.
Now, the Garissa County government has been criticized for negligence in addressing the ongoing drought crisis. Speaking to the media at the county assembly, Rachila Ward representative, that is Nurshey Farah, said that the county government has not demonstrated effective strategies to tackle the disaster, which has left many residents without food and caused livestock losses. Farah explained that in many drought-affected areas in the northern eastern region, efforts to address the crisis have increased, including food and water distribution in collaboration with the national government and the development partners.
Not only Garissa County, the entire northern region. What I failed to actually understand is that for the last 4 years that we have been here, we have been passing a budget in terms of millions and millions. And for the last 4 years that we have been here, no one single cent has been used in terms of drought or any other disaster.
Now, stakeholders and lawmakers are urging the government to provide comprehensive data on children and families living on the streets to address the challenges faced by homeless people in the country. Led by Executive Director Eric Mukoya, Senator Opiyo Omtata and MP Karoli Omondi have taken a stance that the government should release complete data and review relevant laws to collaborate with the communities and other stakeholders. Now, to ensure that homeless families gain proper housing, they have a fundamental human right to shelter in Kenya. Take a look.
The government doesn't have the right numbers because we have numbers for 2018, which we also think were arrived at from formal conversations, not informal conversations. Because for you to reach street connected people, you must have some informal arrangement or a tool that can get you there. Our assumption is anything between 300,000 and 500,000 in this country. The question is this: when we are doing things without knowledge, without evidence, what are our programs?
As part of addressing this question of homelessness, which basically is a symptom of a dysfunctional economy, let us focus on Chapter 12. Let us get the institutions that are prescribed there in place. Let government be run as prescribed in the Constitution in Chapter 12, and we shall be able to have money and the ability to begin intervening.
In terms of what we are discussing, there is homelessness, but there is also the question of inadequate housing. And then there's a question of urban homelessness and inadequate housing in rural areas. It is not just something that is limited to the urban areas. You can't solve the issue of homelessness or inadequate housing if you don't address the question of affordability and incomes.
We're not merely hoping, we're committed to actively realizing a future where every vulnerable child, every youth, and every family in Nairobi has the undeniable opportunity to thrive, completely free from the suffocating grips of citizen and homelessness.
Now, leaders in West Pokot County have demanded to be included in the Lokichar oil extraction project. The leaders have vowed to block the use of Takwel water in oil drilling at the southern Lokichar well if West Pokot residents do not benefit from the public-private partnership agreements. The statement follows a public participation meeting held at the Takwel site regarding the development plans for the Lokichar South Oil project. Now, the meetings were organized by the National Assembly Energy Committee in collaboration with the Senate Energy Committee. Residents noted that although the oil wells are in Turkana, the water used comes from the Takwel Dam in West Pokot, and therefore the county should directly benefit from the project's revenues. The leaders also cited the 2019 Energy Act, emphasizing that West Pokot deserves a share of the oil revenues because its water is crucial for production. Take a look.
Kukunywa na maji ya mifugo yao na pia waweze kufanyiwa irrigation. So hiyo ndio the first point ambayo ndio tuweze kuzungumza mambo ya hii maji.
Ni lazima sasa pahali maji yanatolewa ipate faida ya maji yake vile ilivyo katika Kenya kwa projects nyingi.
And by the grace of God, hii natural resources iko kwa the two communities imekuwa na shida mingi for a long time. Oil Turkana, maji wa Pokot. Tumesoma document zinasema maji haya yote yaende itoe oil. Hakuna mali imeandikwa kwa hii document what profit, what share goes back to the owners of water.
Hii jamii yote mbili wameumia kwa muda mrefu sana. Hata ile fita natoka huko ni kwa sababu ya njaa. Kwa hivyo nataka niulize wale ambao wanahusika, Wizara ya Maji, Irrigation, waitishe mkutano haraka na watuambie ni nini ambayo inaendelea.
Now let's talk matters agriculture, where the CS, that is Macharia, has urged county governments to adopt investor-inclusive systems as a way to boost agriculture in the country. Speaking at an agricultural conference organized by the Coastal Counties Association in Malindi, Kagwe said that the national government cannot fully fund the sector alone. He also warned that if the allocation of land plots is not properly regulated, it could negatively affect the agricultural sector in Kenya.
The need for counties and the national government to engage the private sector to come to us. So the same way we are giving land in Galana Kulalu and elsewhere, ADC farms, prison lands, Kalo lands, that we are now going to land commercialization initiative. I want to persuade the counties to be very passionately involved in attracting private sector into their areas and getting them to work.
As you know, cashew nut used to be a huge economic activity in the coast. So we have come here to continue with the motivation of our farmers to continue growing these crops, especially as you know the coconuts are now very old. We need to revitalize them. Cashew nuts are very old. We need to revitalize them. And from Lamu, Kilifi, Kwale, we have been distributing seedlings of coconuts to the farmers.
We are truly to revitalize agriculture in the region. We must also embrace digitization as a game changer. The future of agriculture is digital. Digital farmer registration systems can improve planning and targeted support.
Now, 3 people have been arrested by police officers working in collaboration with KWS after they were found with over 1,000 kilograms of goat meat, specifically, or rather, the national. Let's take that again. And 3 people have been arrested by police officers working in collaboration with KWS after they were found with over 1,000 kilograms of meat that is believed to be, the wildlife, specifically zebra, and at their residence in Kikambura, Kikuyu, Kiambu County. While confirming the incident, KWS Senior Assistant Director in charge of Southern Area, Joseph Dandacha, said that the three were in process of mixing, the meat with livestock that had been slaughtered at the facility.
Joseph Dandacha, I am Senior Assistant Director in charge of Southern Conservation Area. To a residential house. Now our officers stormed into the house, and upon searching in the house, they found 6 packs of deboned meat weighing about 500 kilograms. Upon further search, they were able to also discover fully dismembered carcass of a zebra, which was awaiting to be deboned in the same house. Now, in this one incident, our officers have managed to recover more than 1,000 kilograms of zebra meat. 3 suspects have been arrested, and they'll be arraigned in court very soon. What was also recovered is some preservative, which we are not too sure whether it is indeed a genuine preservative that is used to preserve the meat before it is consumed by Kenyans. Now, through our own intelligence, we have established that the meat is mostly consumed locally, but the main market is in Nairobi. Like this particular consignment, it was to be ferried to Dagoretti, from there distributed to other joints where unsuspecting Kenyans who like nyama choma would buy it unaware that it is wildlife meat.
Kwa hapa amri ni kwa public health officers wa county government na veterinary officers wahakikisha wamefanya inspection afresh. Inspection afresh inakaa kama kwamba kumekuwa na ulegevu kidogo, kwa sababu nyama haiwezi kuwa inauzwa tu ya bushmeat ya nyama wa porini bila hao kujua. Kwa hivyo kuna ulegevu kidogo hapo, ndio mahali ambapo tunastahili kukaza kidogo. Hii sio incident ambayo ni ya kipekee. Tunajua kuna wengine wengi ambao pia huuza nyama, hata nyama ya punda tunajua. So kwa hivyo tungependa, kando na kuhimiza wafanyabiashara, tungependa pia raia wawe macho wakati wananunua nyama. Wasiwe tu wananunua nyama, wathibitishe kwamba kuna ile mark ya inspection ya nyama, wathibitishe wamenunua nyama kwenye zile sehemu ambazo zinastahili kuuza nyama, sio ile butchery ambayo tumeiona hapa.
Alright, 26 minutes past the top of the hour. I do for a short breather here on Morning Live, but when we come back, we'll tell you what exactly the dailies are saying. Don't go too far. Alright, welcome back to the program, and just in case you're joining us, this is Morning Live. My name is Macharia. Now let's take a look on what the dailies has to say in regards to the governance of this particular country, and I'm having the Daily Nation newspaper this particular morning, and as well as the Standard newspaper this morning. Alright, now top story headlining the Daily Nation is matters healthcare. Alright, and bribes to clear rogo doctors. That's actually the title on this particular newspaper, where the Medics Union has demanded immediate dissolution of the council. Actually, had taken a look at this particular stories in this morning's bulletin. And the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council is tasked with carrying out impartial investigations into complaints of negligence following the death of maiming of patients. But the regulator is now facing accusations of demanding bribes, with errant doctors who play ball getting away with a slap on the wrist as families are left to wait for elusive justice. That's a story on page 2. And then let's take a look at that, what the Daily Nation has to say in this particular scandal, where the scandal of bribes to clear rogue doctors. And of course, CS Health, that is Edin Duale, has announced himself that he and his ministry will actually scrap these rogue doctors in rogue hospitals. Now, the delegation says that for close to 3 years, it was a best kept secret until it wasn't. Now, an 11-minute audio recording which would confirm that the very institution tasked with protecting Kenyans from medical negligence had put justice on sale started to circulate in WhatsApp groups where doctors are the members. Now, in the recording, a Kenyan medical practitioner and dentist council, that is KMPDC official, is heard demanding 500,000 Kenya shillings bribe in return for a slap on the wrist for a doctor who had been found guilty of negligence. All right. Instead, the disciplinary and ethics committee of the KMPDC imposing 1 year suspension and 1 million Kenya shillings fine. The doctor only paid half the amount. The suspension was omitted from the judgment. Now, the KMPDC official says he is the author of the judgment and that the money must be released by the following morning, lest the punishment remain as it was. Eventually, the two men agree on 500,000 Kenya shillings fine, shake hands and walk away. Now, the recording was shared with the KMPDC top brass. However, the officials did not share it with investigative agencies, where KMPDC Chief Executive Officer Dr. George Kariuki said in an interview that, and I quote, that the council, that is the council members, are appointed by the Cabinet Secretary for Health, and as such, any alleged improper conduct is addressed through the appointing authority. And of course, 60 is actually the number of days within which judgments are supposed to be delivered after the conclusion of the hearing, and 5 years that some cases take to be concluded. And 5,000 Kenya shillings is actually the amount Mr. Brian Odhiambo was told to pay for a pint of blood. Now, one would ask the question then, who is failing who? All right, you'll remember the case where the policemen allegedly assaulted people from the pool in some area just last month. We actually saw those police officers were actually transferred to another county. Now, one would ask the question: are we transferring the problem, to other places? Because the agency is expected to to handle this scandal is actually collaborating with these people. What an unfortunate story. Right there, and of course you can get that exclusively on page 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation. Moving on to other matters making headlines on the Daily Nation this particular morning, on the corridors of justice, where JSC, that is the Judicial Service Commission, names 6 applicants in Supreme Court judge race. And of course, there has been interviews that have been going on for the better part of the last few months. In the Judicial Service Commission, where the Judicial Service Commission has unveiled 6 applicants vying to fill a vacant Supreme Court seat. The vacancy arose following the death of Justice Mohammed Ibrahim on December 17th of 2025, reducing the bench to 6 judges. Now, the GSC advertised the position on January 27th and closed applications on February 17th. The applicants 6 applicants are judges Joseph Kiplagat Sejon, who is from the High Court, Wasame Mohammed, Keegan Katwa, and Francis Kipruto from the Court of Appeal, alongside Senior Advocate Anne Washeke, Kiratu Makori, and Lilian Wanjiku Washira. Now, Justice Segon has served as a High Court judge for over 2 decades since his appointment in 2002, while Justice Wasame has presided over major constitutional and commercial disputes at both the High Court and Court of Appeal. Now, before his revelation, or the evaluation to the Court of Appeal in 2012, Justice Wasame served in the High Court's Commercial Division, Criminal Division, and Judicial Review Division. He has also previously served as a member of the JSC, representing his peers at the Court of Appeal. That's a story that goes on and on page 3 of the Daily Nation this particular morning. Now, moving on to matters education on the Daily Nation. Safety, quality fears, and as national schools struggle with congestion. Now, principals of Cluster 1 senior schools, formerly known as national schools, have been accused of admitting learners far beyond their declared capacities. All right, we've actually seen, these teething problems in the education sector since, the Great Eastern actually transitioned to school. There was a case where a certain politician, his son was called in a girls' school, and one may wonder, how these institutions work. Now, principals of Cluster 1 senior schools, formerly known as national schools, have been accused of admitting learners far beyond their declared capacities, raising concerns over their safety as well as the quality of education. Now, principals are reported to have admitted more than 10 grade 10 learners than they were allowed by the Ministry of Education, even as Cluster 4 schools, that is sub-county, struggled to fill their classrooms. Last month, parents rushed to enroll their children in Cluster 1 and Cluster 2, that is extra county schools, after the MOE allowed principals to admit learners directly on the National Education Management Information System, that is NEMIS. Now, the schools have better facilities and a history of strong academic performance. However, this is now a risk owing to the large class sizes, with some schools reported to have more than 15 streams of grade 10 alone. Now, the matter came up for discussion in Parliament when members of the National Assembly's Departmental Committee on Education raised the alarm, questioning the MOE's handling of the transition to senior school under the competency-based education, that is CBE. Right? Of course, you will remember that it was, 844, where they used to grade, the one national schools, extra county, county schools, and sub-county schools. Now they are called Cluster 1. The Cluster 1 has been replaced by the national schools, and as well as the extra counties. That as well is the Cluster 2, and the counties are the sub-county Cluster 3 and 4 respectively. And the CBC was actually introduced by the former president, that is Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. That was in 2013 and 2017 during his tenure, and as well as when that is William Ruto, the head of state, actually came into power, he changed that to CBE. All right, and before then we were actually using 844. Now parents across the country, and as students, teachers as well, have some have lauded the politically allied people have lauded this system of education, but for the parents, have actually cited concerns about the economic strain in funding their kids' education. Right? I don't know what's your take on that, on the CBC and CBE. I beg your pardon. Tell us, how is it for you? Right, Still Matters Education on page 5 of the Daily Nation. NEC to now print national exams locally. Now the Kenya National Examinations Council, that is NEC, is set to print national examinations locally for the first time, ending a long-standing practice of outsourcing the task to firms in Britain. Now, Basic Education Principal Secretary Julius Bitok told the National Assembly's Education Committee that his department has allocated 147 million Kenya shillings in the proposed 2026-2027 budget for the procurement of a machine to printing optical mark recognition forms. Now, the move comes after years of debate over the high cost of logistical challenges of printing examination papers abroad. Now, in May 2025, thousands of candidates faced uncertainty when the National Treasury removed the entire budget for examination registration and invigilation. Now, the omission prompted committee members to question the government's priorities, where Treasury Cabinet Secretary, that is John Mbadi, explained that the 11 billion Kenya shillings annual allocation for the Kenya Certificate of Secondary School Education, that is KCSE examination, had been suspended to allow investigations into reports of funds misuse. All right, now 9.9 billion is actually the amount allocated for schools examination and invigilation function in the 2026-2027 financial year, against a requirement of 14.7 billion Kenya shillings. All right, now why must our examination be printed in London, England? Just my examination, those were the words of Treasury CS, that is John Mbadi. Right, and of course you'll remember in yesterday's dailies, the IEBC was actually pleading for 63 billion Kenya shillings to conduct 2027 elections, right? And they previously used 41 billion Kenya shillings, and now they want 63 billion Kenya shillings. Now one may wonder how this money will be going to be used. All right, they will outline that. All right, moving on to other stories making headlines in the Daily Nation this particular morning. There is a picture there of the head of state and the then head of state, that is President William Ruto, and as well as Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. And Ruto Uhuru Season 2 duel unfolds. That's the title of that particular article on the Daily Nation. And President William Ruto's allies are linking his predecessor Uhuru Kenyatta to growing opposition to his government, suggesting the 2027 general elections could set up a replay of their rivalries in the last polls. Now, Dr. Ruto's camp believe Mr. Kenyatta is assembling a coalition against his re-election, citing the installation of Kalonzo Musyoka as the new party leader to replace Raila Odinga, who died last October, and Fred Matiang'i is a Jubilee deputy party leader. Now, they also see in his hand in the factional wars engulfing ODM. That's a story of Matters Politics on page 7 of the Daily Nation. Now, opposition leaders have also resolved to remain united in their quest to send President William Ruto home come 2027. Now, the leaders pledge to set aside their differences and work together to achieve their goal. All right, now the united opposition principle made the remarks when they addressed rallies at Ogembo, Kenyanya, Nyamache, and as well as Masimba in Kisii County as they wound up their 3-day tour of the region. Jubilee presidential candidate Dr. Fred Matiang'i was the host. Former Deputy President and Democracy for Citizens Party leader Rigathi Gachagua and Mr. Kalonzo Musyoka of the Wiper Patriotic Front, Ms. Martha Karua of the People's Liberation Party, Mr. Eugene Wamalwa of the Democratic Action Party of Kenya, and Mr. Peter Munya of the Party of National Unity were present. Now the leaders said that only a cohesive and disciplined opposition can mount to a formidable challenge to unseat the president at the polls. They said that they have began engaging people in the Rift Valley, President William Ruto's backyard, in plan to broaden their support base. Right, of course, we've actually seen these rallies going on of the opposition. We've seen the opposition, the United Opposition, as they call themselves, led by the DCP party leader and former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, Kalonzo Musyoka, Eugene Wamalwa, and the Jubilee Party, that is whose party leader is actually Uhuru Kenyatta, but his deputy and flag bearer is Fred Matiang'i. And of course, we've seen the ODM, the Linda Mwananchi faction, led by Edwin Sifuna and the likes of Babu and as well as the Linda Ground faction, led by their party leader, that is Oburu Odinga. We've seen the rallies, and one more question: when you look at the rallies of Linda Mwananchi and the United Opposition of the likes of Rigathi Gachagua and the Linda Mwananchi led by Sifuna's led faction, we've seen attacks by police officers. We've seen tear gas canisters being thrown at them. But when you look at this other side of the people who are aligned with the government, yesterday's Standard newspaper was actually asking whose goons. All right. When you look at the rallies or the public rallies of the people who are aligned to the government, there are no attackers, there are no goons, there are no presence of police officers disrupting the meetings. But the opposition actually attacked by tear gas canisters, and one will ask the question: you can't just go to a shopping center and purchase a tear gas canister. Think about it. All right. Moving on to other stories, the Ruto Uhuru Season 2 fallout unfolding ahead of 2027 elections face-off. President William Ruto allies are increasingly linking President Uhuru Kenyatta to growing opposition to his Kenya Kwanza administration, suggesting the 2027 general elections could be a replay of the rivalries in the last polls. Now, in the 2022 general elections, the then outgoing President Uhuru Kenyatta made the unprecedented decision to back opposition leader Raila Amolo Odinga and the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition. It was a dramatic break from his deputy of 10 years, Dr. Ruto, who went on to win the presidential vote. And now, nearly 4 years after the bruising 2022 elections, the contest between Mr. Kenyatta and Dr. Ruto is once again shaping the national conversation through shifting alliances. Among the actions by Mr. Kenyatta that have upset Dr. Ruto's camp is the revival of Azimio by installing Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka as party leader to replace Raila Amolo Odinga, who died last October. President William Ruto has himself scoffed at the plan to revive Azimio. Now, another move by Mr. Kenyatta is the installation by his Jubilee Party and former Interior Cabinet Secretary, that is Fred Matiang'i, as deputy party leader as part of preparations for his presidential candidature. Now, the president's side is also linking Mr. Kenyatta to functional wars with ODM and the emergence of the Linda Mwananchi movement led by ODM Secretary General, that is Edwin Sifuna, who has opposed a plan by a faction led by party leader Oburu Oginga to back Dr. Ruto's re-election. Now, taken together, the president's allies argue these developments suggest Mr. Kenyatta is assembling a coalition against President William Ruto. Political analysts say that in Kenyan politics, rivalries end at the ballot, but mutate, regroup, and return under new banners. All right, that's a story exclusively on page 7 of the Daily Nation Matters Politics. And of course, what's actually binding, ODM, that is the Orange Democratic Movement, and UDA is actually the 10-point agenda signed between the head of state and the former and the late Raila Amolo Odinga, which is actually elapsing in 9 days' time. All right, where the party is actually scheduled to have an NDC next month. That is the month of March. Now, to other matters making headlines, rival coalitions lock horns in 4 by-elections today. Mini polls in Isiolo, Kakamega, and Embu test political alliances, voter loyalty, and party strengthen ahead of the general elections next year. The contest involved the Isiolo South parliamentary seat and 3 wards race. That's on page 17 of the Daily Nation. Of course, we shall be keeping tabs with that, polls, the by-election which is going to be held today in Isiolo, Kakamega, and Embu counties. And of course, we shall be bringing you in a subsequent bulletins later on in the day. All right, moving on to others. Stories making headlines on the Standard newspaper. All right, and top story on the Standard newspaper says RSF passport shame, and as you can see on the sidelines of your screen, there is a picture there of Algoni Hamdan Daglo Musa, a young brother to the RSF commander Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo. And of course, there is a picture there of President William Ruto with RSF's General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo at State House, Nairobi, on January 3rd of 2024. All right. Now, the Standard says that a diplomatic storm is brewing after the U.S. sanctioned Algoni Hamdan Dagalo Musa, younger brother to RSF Commander Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, for alleged genocide weapons procurement and financing paramilitary operations in Sudan. Shockingly, U.S. records show he holds a Kenyan passport, raising questions about how a warlord secured the official document. The revelation threatens to intensify scrutiny over Kenyan's past engagements with RSF. That's on page 4 of the Standard newspaper this particular morning, which is actually headlining the Standard on the front page. Right now, officials mom as Sudan RSF rebel leader found with Kenyan passport. Of course, you'll remember that some few years ago, the RSF was actually having a meeting at State House in Nairobi, where jabs were thrown at the head of state because of that particular meeting. Now it has emerged that Kenyans immigrations officials aided one of the Sudan's most powerful warlords to secure a Kenyan passport to facilitate his movements intentionally or internationally while evading existing sanctions. Now the U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control has revealed Sudan's Rapid Support Forces, that is RSF, Algoni Hamdan Dagalo Musa, is facing U.S. sanctions and shockingly is documented as holding a Kenyan passport among multiple other identities. Now the alarming revelation implies the key RSF figure traveled, moved money to or accessed international systems at will armed with Kenyan documentations. Algoni is the youngest brother of the dreaded Sudanese the paramilitary commander, that is Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, also known as Hemedti. Right, that's a story exclusively on page 4 of the Standard newspaper. Non-matters, national matters. United opposition vows to block the sale of government entities, and opposition leaders have vowed to block President William Ruto's efforts to sell government stakes in key states organizations. With Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka, his DCP counterpart Rigathi Gachagua, Jubilee Deputy Party leader Fred Matiang'i's People's Liberation Party boss Martha Karua, PNU leader Peter Munya, DAPK chief Eugene Wamalwa speaking at various political rallies in Kisii County, accused President William Ruto of seeking to privatize all publicly owned companies in a way that will benefit only him and a select few. And of course, we've actually seen this back and forth of selling of the Safaricom shares. Right now, the United Opposition have actually vowed to block the sale of government entities. That's on page 5 of the Daily Nation, the Standard newspaper, I beg your pardon, this particular morning. Now, the African editors vow duty of care amid threats to scribes. Now, African editors have resolved to strengthen protection and duty of care for journalists working in hostile political and security environments. They also warned that growing threats against reporters are undermining independent journalism across the continent. The commitment was made on Wednesday during the biannual general meeting of the African Editors Forum held in Nairobi. During the meeting, editors said journalist safety would now be treated as a core professional and institutional responsibility, not an optional newsroom policy. Right, and of course, this is actually critical for the members of the fourth estate, those the media and the journalists. We've seen the protests which are there for the better part of 2024 and 2025. We've seen journalists actually being attacked. Those are journalists from a local TV station where he had a helmet and a tear gas can was actually bore a hole in his helmet. Of course, that actually actually shows how the media is actually at risk during a political protest here in the country. Of course, that will be followed to the latter even as we head to 2027 general elections. Now on page 2, little to show, despite the governor spending 4.6 trillion since 2013. That's a story on page 2. Let's take a look at that. Now the Parliamentary Budget Office, that is PBO, has called out county governments for spending trillions of shillings without improving the people's living conditions. The PBO, which advises MPs on budget matters, said that counties should now refocus their priority and spend more on programs that have an impact on the residents to reduce worsening poverty. Right, that's on page 2 of the Standard newspaper, and as well as on page 2, matters healthcare. MPs seek to end disputes on who controls KMTC. Now, the National County Assembly Committee and on Health has called on for urgent legal reforms and proper funding alignment to end a long-running dispute in the management and student placement at the Kenya Medical Training Colleges, that is KMTC. Now, the committee told Cabinet Secretary, that is Eden Duale, that the back and forth between ministries and institutions was undermining training, staffing, and service delivery. That's as well on page 2 of the Standard newspaper. Now on page 3, father wins right to child's name in a landmark ruling. That is national matters. And family agony as killed body detained in morgue of Abil. Now a family in Misiku, Bungoma County is unable to bury their son, William Mushika, whose body is being held at hospital in Mombasa due to an outstanding bill. Mushika's body has been detained at Mombasa Hospital, with the family struggling to raise 700,000 Kenya shillings required to clear the charges. Speaking to the Standard, the family, led by Mushika's grandmother Penina Wambilianga, said that he had left home seeking better opportunities but fell ill suddenly and died while receiving treatment in Mombasa. Now, Simon Wambilianga, a relative, added that the grandmother sells her land to pay the bill. They will be left homeless. Of course, we hope that they will be given their body to rest their kin in peace. Right, on matters education, chaos as students protest transfer of Kiba B principal. Now students at St. Mary's Kiba B National School in Bungoma yesterday staged protest over the transfer of the principal, Nicodemus Ogeto, demanding his unconditional reinstatement. The agitated learners called on the Teacher Service Commission to reverse the transfer of the chief principal to Rio Kondo Boys High School in Kisii County. Ogeto has since had replaced by Dr. Geoffrey Murunga, formerly Agoseta Boys High School. All right, that's on matters education on the Standard newspaper this particular morning. All right, it is exactly 3 minutes past the top of the hour. You're now up to speed, those you're waking up to this particular morning as far as news is concerned. Of course, we shall be keeping tabs with these developing stories and shall be bringing you in a subsequent bulletins later on in the day, including the by-elections which are actually scheduled to be held today. That is in Isiolo County, Kakamega County, and as well as in Embu counties. All right, you're now up to speed with what you're waking up to this morning as far as news is concerned. My name is Macharia. Thank you so much for keeping me company until this particular minute. Your faith today is the program coming to you up next in the top of the hour at 9 a.m. Don't miss that particular show. Do have yourself a lovely day. Enjoy the rest of your viewing, and as always, let's do this again when God says we do.